Blessings and welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. Today we're in Numbers 25 and 26, and this this feels like part two, a follow-up of yesterday's uh, daily read. But we're in chapter 25. Um, Balaam, who we talked about yesterday, his chapter is ended. Chapter 24 is done. But in chapter 25, immediately following that, we see this seduction of Israel. And we see that Moabite women are coming into the camp. Well, and let me just read it. Chapter 25, verses 1 through 3. While Israel was staying in Shittim, the men began to indulge in sexual immorality with Moabite women, who invited them to the sacrifices of their gods. The people ate and bowed down before these gods. So Israel joined in worshiping the Baal of Peor, which was their god, and the Lord's anger burned against them. So we've got the king of Moab and Balaam yesterday or the king of Moab wanting Balaam to entice the Israelites or to curse the Israelites, which he wouldn't do. So it ends with Balaam going his separate ways and the king of Moab going his separate ways. Then all of a sudden today we see Moab, that same country, the Moabite women coming and seducing Israelite men to worship a false god. Where did this come from? In Numbers 31, and again, I'm getting a little ahead because this is not up for a couple of days when we get into Numbers 31. But let me read you this. In Numbers 31, verses 15 and 17, Moses asks, now the Israelites have fought Moab, and Moses asks, "Have you allowed the women to live?" he asked. They were the ones who followed Balaam's advice and enticed the Israelites to be unfaithful to the Lord in the Peor incident, so that a plague struck the Lord's people. Now kill all the boys and kill every woman who has slept with a man. Balaam's return. And this is a little bit down the road, but I just don't want us to miss it, because 25, we're seeing this, what does he call it? The episode at Peor, the Peor incident, because they worship Baal of Peor. Moses basically says, why'd you kill all the soldiers of Moab and bring in the spies, who were the women who spied out the country? And so that's why he tells them to go and kill the women. But this sin that Balaam caused Israel to commit, Balaam holds a big area of responsibility for this, but also the leaders of Israel were responsible for not stopping this when they saw it going on. And I'm going to read another part to you out of chapter 25 that's going to help you to realize that. And if you are a leader, I mean, even if you're not a supervisor, but all the officers on your shift look to you for advice and counseling, you're a leader. Every police officer that works the beat is a leader. So this applies to all of us. So the leader's character is incredibly important to God. Listen to what he says in 25 verse 4. The Lord said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of these people, kill them and expose them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that the Lord's fierce anger may be turned away from Israel." He's talking about the leaders of Israel who allowed this to go on. It was a death sentence, a death penalty. They were done for. The Lord tells Moses to do this, so Moses goes to his officials, basically his law enforcement officers who are involved in judging and leading, and Moses calls the judges and the officials of the law, and he says, "So Moses said to Israel's judges, each of you must put to death those of your people who have yoked themselves to the Baal of Peor, to the god of Peor." It's a terrible day in the history of Israel. It's a terrible event, and they learned a valuable lesson about being led not by the Lord, but being led by sexual immorality into worshiping false idols. Um, luckily, there was a guy named Phinehas who was zealous for God, and when this happened, he jumped up and he killed an Israelite man who was taking a Moabite woman into his tent, and he stopped the plague, and he was rewarded for this. God says that he would give him a covenant of peace, and his descendants would also benefit greatly from this covenant, that they would be priests for generations to come. And we're not going to see, this is not the end of Phinehas. We're going to see him again later. Again, not going to spoil anything, but Phinehas and Balaam, we're not done with either one of them. We're going to read more about them later. Read Numbers 27, 28, 29. This is an interesting ongoing story. Let's just say part 3 of this story is tomorrow. So read ahead and come back here and let's mash this out. You guys be safe.